to episode 9 of Crafting for Profit Live. We are so excited that you are joining us today. Today's topic is easy marketing tips for creative businesses. So we're basically going to help you promote all of those awesome things that you are making. We are going to be taking questions in the chat that are related to this topic. We will be answering those toward the end. So go ahead and leave your questions about marketing and we can answer those. If you have off-topic questions, we are happy to answer those, but not in this episode. So go ahead and click on the link down in the description of this video or the podcast notes. And there's a form that you can fill out to ask us questions if you have something that's not related to marketing.
And then we have been loving your support for this podcast. So just to let you know, as of today, we were ranked number 1 in the United States for the crafts category on Apple Podcasts. So yes.
So exciting.
So if you want to continue to support us, be sure to rate and review the podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Click the little 5 stars, drop us a review. If you're on YouTube, give us a little thumbs up, that type of thing, and share this episode with any friends. If you have friends that need marketing tips for this business, for their craft business, this is a great episode to send them. And speaking of that, we're going to introduce our speaker, and we have Chelly today. And Chelly is the CEO at We Can Make That. So Chelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations, ladies. That's exciting. I feel like there's so much I could say when people say introduce yourself, but it's like either keep it really small or really big, right? So I've been craft blogging since 2017. I don't want to do math because I'm a creative. And I've been an entrepreneur for 27 and a half years now. So a lot of marketing, a lot of graphic design, and then decided to venture out because I got kind of sick of designing things for other people and decided it was time to just design what I wanted to design and then help people create with it.
I love that. All right. Are we ready to dive into questions?
Let's dive in. I could talk about marketing 24/7. So
I used to work in marketing specifically. So yes, for a Fortune 500 company. So it's a little bit different than marketing your crafts, but I do have a marketing background. So for people starting at square one, what is the very first step or steps they should take if they haven't marketed their craft business before?
Okay, so I'm going to assume with that question that they already have their product. They already know if they're making wreaths or tumblers or that kind of thing. I think the very important thing that a lot of us skip over or think we can like cast a big net over it is who is our ideal customer. We try to think, well, I could sell to anybody that wants to buy, like anybody and everybody, and I could make anything and everything. But when you cast that wide net, it takes a lot longer to collect all those customers in the audience. So narrowing down that one ideal customer is going to help you actually scale faster.
Yeah, that's something that like even Corey and I do in like our businesses, even though we don't sell crafts anymore, is to narrow down like who that ideal customer is. And I find it helpful even to like give that person a whole persona, a name, a state they live in, like a whole persona around that person, so I can like think of them.
Yeah, yes. I feel like giving them even how much disposable income they have, what are their favorite TV shows, like really having this specific person in mind is really helpful because then you know who you're talking to. If you're talking to everybody, you're talking to no one.
Exactly. Yes. I think that's it's very easy to say, well, I just want that big net though. I want to get everybody. I don't want to miss anybody. But when you narrow it down with all those things that you guys talked about, and chances are you probably already know it. Because if you're at the point where you're like, I'm going to sell my crafts as a business, somebody has offered to buy them or has already bought them. So just build a profile around them. And it's not, I think it becomes scary where I'm going to lock myself in and lose customers for it, but you can always change it as you keep going and you think, okay, I'm going to do dog bandanas for dog lovers. And then you end up adding, things for cats or something like that with it, where it's kind of still really niche down, but it just grows with you.
Yeah. I think my persona changed during COVID because I feel like I market to people that want to make crafts. And during COVID, that got a younger and younger and younger, because younger and younger people were crafting. And all of a sudden my YouTube channel was full of a different generation even. And I kind of had to change up my mindset about who I was speaking to.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if we think we can speak to everyone, you really can't. So like I could say I'm making tumblers. We come back to this as like our main example all the time, but say I'm making tumblers. I can't make funny tumblers for vegans and also funny tumblers for people who like a good steak, right? Like the vegans are probably going to be offended by the steak tumbler and the steak people are going to be like, about the vegans, and you're just not going to like connect with anybody. But say you're making like all barbecue items, maybe you're going to get those people who love to grill and love to barbecue. And you're not going to have to worry about the vegans being offended by your product. You're just speaking to a specific type of person who likes to grill.
I love
And I
that.
feel like this is leading us to question number 2. So what's the best way to like narrow that down, determine that target audience, and then direct those marketing efforts toward them?
I think very similar to what we just said, really, is, when you cast that big net, you're gonna miss those ideal clients, or it's gonna take longer to gather them. So really sit down, grab a piece of paper or something and say, okay, I'm gonna write down all of these. I don't want to say what's the right word here. So all the things that are tied around them. Where do they shop? Who do they like? Do they like to read? Do they like to shop? Where do they like to shop? Age, gender, those kind of things. And once you have that, every time you go out there to create a post or create content or create a description for whatever item you're going to sell, if you think you're just talking to that one person, whatever you've named him or her, it becomes a lot easier for you to create the content that you're putting out too.
Yeah, I feel like it also becomes a bit easier to like almost connect with your community, because you are speaking to that one person instead of speaking to the masses. So it's almost like you're having a conversation with that person in your mind, that person you've developed that character for. And it's, for me, it's easier to connect with a single person rather than a whole mass of people.
And you can also think of it, I mean, yes, we talk a lot about creating that one single person, but you can also think about a smaller group of people. Like, if you're selling, we had Jamila on recently, and she talked about how her audience was a lot of moms who would buy things for their kids' school, like sparkly school gear that she would make. And that's not just one person, because there's a lot of different types of moms. There's a lot, but they all had a lot of things in common. They wanted to show their school pride. They all went to specific schools in her city. They all had, probably a similar amount of disposable income, all of these different things. So they do have a lot in common, but it may not be just one person, if that's a little bit too difficult for you to wrap your mind around.
That's a good example. Yeah.
And I find it's sometimes good to like poll the people you're selling to or you're marketing to. So if you do a craft fair, talk to those people that are purchasing. Like, find that common denominator. What kind of do they have in common? If you're selling on Etsy, then maybe you like send a poll out to people that have purchased from you. If you have that email list that Corey and I talk about during every episode, you can email your people and ask them some questions. And I even went so far several years back as to ask people if they would do like basically a one-on-one session with me and just answer some questions. So just like jump on Zoom, 15-minute call, ask them some questions, ask them about where they are at, and you can kind of like narrow down your audience a little bit and think about targeting through that way.
That's a good idea. And I think even using your social media, which is going to help with engagement, and just putting out polls once a week maybe, and say, who's a pet lover, or do you love to read, or do you love Audible? Those kind of things. It'll help you get to know your customer, but then you can also sneak in some of those questions about your products specifically and see, do they want more colors? Do they want seasonal? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And a little bit going back to just speaking to that audience member too, like say my audience is women who are 30 to 50 who like, who like to bake, right? That's my audience, and I'm making cooking gear or something. I do feel like, you want to be able to speak to that person in the language that they understand, right? So they would know baking terms. I actually don't bake. I did not pick a really great example for this. They would know baking terms. If they're women, honestly, we're probably using way more exclamation points than we would use if we were sending to a primarily male audience. We're using some hey girl language, maybe, like depending on what it is. You're really learning how to speak to that person, and that will sort of self-select your audience for you as well. So it'll like kind of weed out the people that are just not your people and really give you this nice focused little group of people who want to buy from you.
Yeah. And the more you lean into it, the easier it gets. So if people are starting to sweat right now listening to us say, go out there and talk to your audience and be social with them, like it gets easier the more you do it, especially when they start to talk back and communicate and share how much they love your products and, have those real-time conversations. It's actually fun.
Crafters are introverts, so it is the hardest thing to put yourself out there. I feel like that's one of the biggest hurdles in the beginning is just putting yourself out there. Like being a little social. Just you have to one foot in front of the other, just a little social. Put up a poll on your Instagram. Start there.
Yeah, you don't have to put your face. You could take a picture of your products.
All right. So I love question number 3. Why is branding important for a small business? What are the essential elements of a strong and memorable brand? All of this kind of when it comes to marketing.
Yes. So for me, when you first start out and you post that first Tumblr, and the next thing you pull up your social media and there's 37 other Tumblr makers in your news feed, and you start to panic that there's no room for you. And then you think, well, if all of these people are doing it, how do I stand out? So I think branding is what's going to help you stand out. And plus, just to backtrack on that a little bit, if that happens to you and all these other competition are in your newsfeed, that is not so much deterrent from, there's not room for me, but it's just showing you how well that whatever niche you picked is actually working out there. And then so what can you do what was that, the last part of the question, to help us?
What are the essential elements of like, where should people start when trying to create a brand maybe?
I would say the first place, once you have your ideal client, like we talked about, and then you're out there to put content out. So a lot of times people go out and they start creating content, and every time they do a little graphic or a tag or something like that for their shop, whether it be in person on Etsy, in person or on Etsy, is they have a new favorite font this week. And then after 3 to 4 months go by, your Etsy shop or your table at the craft show kind of looks messy because nothing's cohesive. And then again, every time you go out there to create that product or that little sign or whatever, and you're going through the font list and trying to pick a new font, trying to pick a new color, it's also wasting time. So I think sitting down and coming up with that color palette where you always have this for your heading font, you always have this color for your main color, and they always say to pick a red or a pink color as like a third option in your color palette, because people are 40% more apt to click on a red button than they are any other color. So I thought that was very interesting. And I have a few people who've tried it and they said it definitely works. So now all my buttons are usually pink too. But so I think coming up with those basic things so that you don't have to think about it is one of those things that really helps you create your brand. But then also when customers land on there, it looks more professional. So having that cohesive design, with the colors and the fonts, I think it's a big part, especially with the visual world that we live in right now.
I think that one thing that I talk about a lot, because I love branding, one of the things I talk about a lot is that a lot of times constraint can actually really explode your creativity, right? So if you're looking through 600 fonts on your computer, trying to pick one font every single time, and you're just completely overwhelmed, you're not going to be actually creative when you're making other things, right? Like you're just basically being bogged down, like you said. Whereas if you're like, okay, I know I'm going to use this font. What can I use this image on? I could use it on this or this or this, or I could, I feel like it's, part of your puzzle, right? And it just makes it so much easier to put the rest of the pieces in.
Yes. That makes it
So
easier.
you were talking about those buttons, and I have also heard that, Chelly. And I was like, green means go. The button should be green because green means go. And green is the worst.
I know.
Red means stop.
Yeah. I think we're just so laid back with green, But yeah, that was my first thought too, was like, oh, who made this up? But it does work.
I also had a no pink or pink anything in my color palette when I first started really branding my business. I had like 3 shades of teal and yellow and a green, and it was very cool pattern or cool palette. I really loved it. Those are actually my favorite colors. And then I would get to Valentine's Day and it was like, I cannot make anything with these colors, or I'd get to Christmas and I'd be like, all right, this is difficult. And so a couple of years after that, I added 2 pinks into my palette. And now it's, a nice little rainbow and I can make all sorts of things, which just makes it easier to stay sort of within that palette for everything that I make. If I have a craft booth table, I'm making things generally within that palette and it looks really cohesive.
I love that. Yeah.
All right, next question. How can content marketing, examples, blogs, videos, tutorials, how can those help promote craft products that you're selling?
So when you open a store, whether it be digital or in person, if nobody knows you're there, it's going to be really hard to make a couple sales, right? And that's where all of that content, you're making reels, blog posts, and if you're using the right SEO, that's going to also help you get people there. So you don't always have to pay to play if you work smarter, not harder.
We're going
to say the same thing. We just recently did an SEO episode with Holly Homer, and I feel like the takeaway from that was basically like you can target, one keyword with your product listing perhaps, but you could write a blog post about how to use that tumbler, ways to use it, ways to gift it, or different things like that, and target a whole different set of keywords. And so you're pulling in even more people that way as well. So using that content to pull more people into like basically your club, your online club, pulling those people in, getting them on your email list, and eventually selling to them.
Yeah, I think that takes that ideal client, and then by building out those other elements, like you said, it kind of gets the rest of those people who are going to maybe buy from you at Valentine's Day, but they don't want to follow you on social media, those kind of things. So they're a target audience, but they're not an ideal customer. And I think that kind of helps bring them all together, but not in an overwhelming way.
I completely had a thought and it has gone out of my mind.
And so they're usually the best too.
I know. And I'm like, this was a really great thought. And it's just gone, guys. So I'll come back to it.
I would say when it comes to content marketing as well, don't be afraid of video. That might have been was that your point, Corey?
No, but I remember my point.
Okay. Now. I was going to say, don't be afraid of video. It's hard. It can be very difficult in the beginning. It's hard to see yourself. It's hard to listen to yourself. But one step at a time. I started with like short videos. You can do just your hands, so you only have to hear your voice. Baby steps, but people want video. They really do.
My thought, now that I remember it, is that you can also use all of this content in your email list to market to your own people already. So you've got a new blog post, you have a new video up, whatever it is, you can send that to the people who are already on your list and say, hey, I've got a new product. I'm doing this craft show, any of these things. It's just more content to be able to send to people.
Yeah, so you don't have to make a new piece of content for all these different areas. You can keep reusing it. And yes, video is definitely king. And I know as creatives, I know there's some people cringing as we go down this rabbit hole of video, right? And I have to share my story. So when I first started, I was like, no way. Like I didn't want my name even on any of my blog, any of that. I signed it, just my first name, so nobody could really find me anywhere. And I took this is kind of funny. So in high school, I took Spanish twice, so I would not have to take speech class because I never wanted to be on camera, talk in front of people. And now I can't speak Spanish and I go live and talk on camera and talk to people all the time. But the thing that I think took me from being afraid to do it to being confident when doing it, and not always confident. I can't say I didn't have jitters before we, came on and went live, but it was feeling like, when I go out there and I start to do the presentation or you start to talk about the product or whatever, feeling like I didn't know enough about it to be able to have that conversation. And knowing all that stuff in your head and saying it out loud are two different things. So I would practice when I go pick up kids in carpool. I'd be in the car talking to myself. And I hope everybody around me just thought I was on speaker and talking to somebody else. But I was literally just rehearsing like how I would sign off from a video, how I would sign on to a video. And it sounded so dumb. And then as I started to do it, and it just became second nature. And I thought that was kind of the key, is just getting comfortable doing it. And it made going on camera a lot easier. That and good lighting were very beneficial.
I was just about to mention, I feel like a lot of us for the video piece of it are like, I do not have the equipment, I don't have the space, I don't have all of these things, which I understand. Like, we have professional studios now because we do this for a living, right? And so there are ways to, I know there are classes out there for being able to take better, photos and videos with your phone. Like, that might be a good place to invest just a little bit of money so you can better market your products via social media and all of those other places.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to what we were talking about before, because establishing that ideal customer also gives you a person to talk to on video. So a lot of times for me in the beginning, it was like kind of imagining that person and breaking down the steps for them or explaining it in a way they would understand. Again, Corey was talking about using that language, a language that they would understand, that they would relate with. So speaking to that person instead of just staring at a wall with a little camera and trying to like make my brain work. So almost having a conversation with that ideal customer.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like we're getting a little off topic here, but I feel like this is what people would like to know. For me, I do have that person that I'm talking to, but because I'm making both blog posts and videos, I actually write my blog post first. And you'll notice in most of my videos, I just have my computer sitting next to me because I am referencing that blog post the whole time. So I'm not going to forget things. I'm going to know what number in my craft library the file is, like all of these different things. So even if you're just making a reel, for me, I cannot do a voiceover without reading it. Like, Angie's over here creating all of these reels where she just, off the top of her head, I will every single time type out exactly what I'm going to say, and then I will read it because I cannot think of things off the fly like that. For me, I get too messed up. I get really frazzled. I also go way too fast. So you can always just write stuff down and then, use that as a voiceover for whatever you're making. You don't have to film and make something at the same time. You can make the thing and film the making of it, cut out all that sound, speed it up, and then just do like, hey, let's make a Tumblr, blah, 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 blah. And it works really well.
I think that gets rid of some of that jitters or being self-conscious about, and then you trip over words. And yeah, so to be able to just go record it, go back, and then edit as you're adding that over voiceover becomes a lot easier too.
Takes the fear out of content marketing.
Some of the fear.
Yeah.
Some of the fear.
Right?
You still have to get out there and not be an introvert.
Yeah. And it's okay to be nervous, I think, too. Like, it's not like, like I said, it's not like when you go and do content and go live and make videos that you're supposed to not be nervous. Like, it's a human nature. So it's a normal emotion for us. So don't let that hold you back either. So
yeah, we do this all the time, and I'm still like a little jittery every time we hop on here.
It's those lights staring at you that we have now. It feels like I'm about to be interrogated.
There's a lot of lights that you guys can't see.
A lot.
All right. So today we have a special sponsor. It's very special to my heart because my book publisher is our sponsor today. Better Day Books is sponsoring today's podcast. Thank you so much, Peg, and everyone at Better Day Books for sponsoring today. We wanted to talk a little bit about my new book. I've talked about it here before, but the code Crafty20 is still working to get 20% off my new book. It's called Sublimation Crafting. It is, shocker, all about sublimation crafting, but it walks you through everything you need to know to get started, and it gives you 15 different projects to make at the end of the book, including all the time, temperature, pressure, troubleshooting, tips, tricks, all of those things. So if you haven't picked up my book yet, this is what today's sponsor spot is all about. And if you have picked it up, I would love to hear what you think over in the comments.
And so To get Corey's book, I put the QR code up in the corner if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, it's link.craftingcamps.com/Corey book. That's CORI book, BOOK.
There's
People
about
misspell
8
your
ways.
name.
I know there's like 20 ways to spell my name.
Should not have put your name in that link, but that's okay. And then the coupon code is crafty20, and that gets you 20% off. And I must say the book is amazing if you want to start sublimation crafting or just want to like learn more about sublimating certain things. Like the illustrations for the sublimation sandwich alone are worth the price of the book. Let's just say that right now.
I love that. I like the way that the designer put this whole book together. There was a professional photographer, so I can take decent photos. This person took even better photos. High five to Lori. I feel like it is just a really beautiful book as well as super helpful.
Yeah, and you get those files with it. So if you like the look of the book, the files that she made the projects with, you actually get those with the books. I think that's another like incentive to buy, I feel like.
Yeah, there's like 30 sublimation files, and they're all kind of inspiring, sort of retro. They're really cute. I love
They're
that
so
book.
cute. They are such cute files. Just get it for the files.
All right, friends, we are already halfway through this podcast. How did that happen? All right. So we're going back to one of our favorite topics. How can you use email marketing to build and maintain those customer relations?
Well, first of all, I feel like this has been said maybe once or twice on here before, but email I think is the best way to build your business, right? You own it. We could go down a rabbit hole there too, but it helps me nurture, like really put my brand out with everybody who's on my email list. And the first time I got my email programs, and I'm like, I'm going to send one a month, which I probably said to the person that I was, working with. I probably whispered that. Like I was so shy about having to send that first email. And then when they open it and click it, it was just like, it was better than likes on social media, I thought. And as it grew, I would have to say it's probably the number one, I think of all the time I spend on Facebook or Instagram or any of those, and then how much time it takes me to send an email. It's a no-brainer. That email is probably the number one thing you could do for your business today.
Yeah, and it's often made up of your biggest fans. Like the biggest fans are going to be the ones that sign up for your email list. So those are going to be your best customers, your repeat customers, the people that want to buy again, the people that love the product. Like I feel like those are the people that are going to join anyway. Those are the people you want to promote to. Those are the people you want to market your business to, your sales, your new products, that new blog post, that awesome reel that you made because you're quit being an introvert. You want to send it to those email people.
I think being real in your email too, and being like, okay, Instagram is really hard for me, but I made a reel and I'm really proud of myself. Please check it out. Let me know what you think. Would you like to see more of this? I have a lot of people on my email list, and I still send emails that say, respond to this email and I'll chat with you. And I do. I chat with people who email me. And so I feel like it's a really great way to connect one-on-one with people. It's a great way to build relationships. And they always say that it's easier to get a repeat customer than it is to make a new customer. And this is just one way to nurture those relationships.
I think that's good too. And a lot of times when people unsubscribe, then that kind of sends them into panic with the emails, but it's good. It gets rid of the noise in your circle, in your bubble that really isn't going to buy from you right now. I don't know how many times I've unsubscribed and resubscribed to different emails, but when you're out there on social media, I feel like I never go unfollow people. And then you have those people kind of clouding up so that you can't get to your ideal customer quite as easy as you can, I feel, with email.
Yeah, and I feel like I think of an unsubscribe. I try to think of it as like they're not my ideal person. They're not my ideal person I need to market to. I should not be worried about that. I shouldn't be concerned about it. They were not the person for me. And if they become that person, like you said, they'll resubscribe later. So I try not to be offended by those unsubscribes.
I try to not look either anymore.
I feel like that's just the best way. We can always focus on the negative, and we've talked about mindset and other things here, and it's really hard to not focus on the negative. I think our brains automatically want to pick out this person's doing something better than me, and 10 people unsubscribed, and I didn't make as many sales, and like to focus on those things. But it's just detrimental to our businesses instead of being like, wow, I had my best day on Etsy ever, like the fact that we are number one podcast, right, in the crafts category. Like, I mean, you have to celebrate those wins. You have to we could say, yeah, we're the number one we're the number one podcast in crafts, but we're not cracking the top 1,000 in podcasts in general. We could be really bummed that we're not, making a giant podcast, but we are reaching our target audience perfectly.
Yeah. And so if you are not subscribed to the Crafting for Profit Live email, it's in the description below the YouTube video. It's in the podcast notes. We started a monthly newsletter, and we're including a little personal tidbits about both of us. So if you want to know things like what we're reading, what we're binge watching, I would subscribe to that newsletter.
Get some little personal details about us. I'll give you a spoiler alert that both of us binged Bridgerton, and now we're waiting for the second half of the season.
That's funny.
All right. So next question: how can you encourage repeat business and word of mouth referrals?
Number one, I think let's just go back to email right away and be done with it. Is like Coria just said, it's easier to upsell somebody or resell somebody again than it is to go out there and find a new customer. So I think that's probably one of my favorite go-to. And then also having some upsell. So if you sell tumblers, having a matching keychain or something like that. A lot of times when people have gifts that they're giving, and that's why they buy personalized items, that having something little that you can add on and upsell that's easy, that's not, I don't know, overwhelming or time consuming for you, but it adds a little bit of fun to the product you're already making. That's another way that you could upsell.
I like if you're shipping something, including like a coupon, for 10, 20% off your next order, or an email that says, thanks for ordering. Here's a coupon.
I use that one myself. Thanks for ordering. Here's a coupon.
Right.
So I would definitely say that's my top thing. Word of mouth. If there's a way you can encourage people to share what they purchased on their social media so that their friends see it, often their friends are going to be very closely related. If they're your ideal customer, their friends are probably going to be your ideal customer. So any way to encourage them to share. You share on social, you get entered to win, a tumbler or whatever you're selling, something like that. And when you share, what you've purchased, then you get one entry or something like that. So just encouraging them to share on their social is a good way to get that word of mouth referral. And then just making great products is often the best way to get repeat business and word of mouth referrals, because they're going to talk about you. So making the best product you possibly can, and that sale will often turn into a repeat sale, a sale to their friend, a sale to a family member of theirs or something like that, because they are going to talk about it. They're going to show it off. Oh my God, I got this amazing etched tumbler from this Etsy store. You have to check it out. It's going to work if your product's amazing, I feel like.
I think that leads, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that also leads into testimonials, which can play a big part on the back end of your marketing, where looking at the words that they use and how they talk about your product and how they encourage others to buy, like what kind of bracket are they encouraging, or you can tell their language and who they're talking to, and then pick up how they're using words. Because a lot of times we're so in depth, it's like with vinyl, adhesive vinyl, when that came out and you'd cut out words, you'd put it on your wall, and then somebody would say, can you make me a sticker? I'd be like, nope, but I can make you I can cut some vinyl for you. So making sure that you're using the right words that they understand, because they might be searching for sticker to find your product. So.
Yeah. And I think maybe looking at your product line and thinking, what will other people see? So going back to Jamila, if these moms were wearing these blinged out shirts for their kids' school, that is a great marketing right? Because people are like, where did you get that? Oh my God, I got to have one. And Jamila made it. Okay, well, I'm going to go to Jamila and have her make one for me. Whether that's, a water bottle, whether it's whatever it is that might be more public, something that a pair of clay earrings that somebody's wearing, a knitted scarf, whatever it is, think about the things in your product line that maybe isn't, maybe if you do home decor, maybe think about figuring out what might still fit in your niche that maybe more people might see. I'm not really sure, but just kind of think along the lines of your products themselves can market them.
Like when you have shirts and then you can get the little stamp to put your own, or sublimation or something like that. So you can put your own label in. So she can say, oh, I got that sparkly shirt. I remember she had, white glasses. And then here, look, what was her name again? And then, so yeah, putting that branding on your product. And it also makes your product seem more valuable. So it becomes something as a marketing tool and then helps you sell easier.
Yeah, I like that actually, because a lot of times I'm like, oh, I got it from that Etsy shop. And that's all I've got.
I
Right?
remember her dog's name, but I can't remember her name. Yeah.
Yes,
I
I don't know
follow her on
any.
social media now.
Yeah. I'm like, if I run into somebody and they're like, hi, I'm Kate. And they're like, we know each other. And I'm like, and then they give me their social media handle. I'm like, oh, I know, that kind of thing.
It was like those a couple episodes ago, those butter shirts, and neither
Yes.
one of us could remember her actual name, but we remembered butter shirt. And so we're Googling butter shirt
To try and figure out
to try
who
and
she
figure it
was.
out because we couldn't actually remember her name, but we loved the butter shirt.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny. Yes.
It's Bakery Tea Co. if anybody needs a butter shirt. I have finally remembered it. All right. Question number 7. What are some common mistakes new craft business owners make in their marketing efforts, and how can they avoid them?
My first go-to is picking their very, very favorite font that nobody but them can read. You know how the S's and the R's look like a U, or, those odd things. So if you show it to somebody and they stumble over the pronunciation, make sure you don't use that font. I think the other thing is picking too many colors, like we had talked about, over and over and over again. And then thinking that the education for marketing, like a lot of people feel like, I'm not a marketing guru, I don't know how to market. You can learn how to market your own brand. You don't have to know everything about marketing. You just have to educate yourself on the things that you don't already know. And then when you know better, you do better. I'd say those are my top 3.
I feel like we get a lot of people in our Facebook groups who are like, do you like this logo? And if you take, a step 5 feet back from that logo and you cannot read it, start over. Right? If you can't read that font from a distance, yeah, it's probably more boring. I mean, look at the font I have up here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see our Crafting for Profit logo here. It's the kind of the most boring font you've ever seen, but can you read it? Yes, you can. I've picked some cute colors that match our branding, but it's readable. And so if you want to have a super fancy font, it's just making it harder for people to know what your brand is called. It makes them have to do that extra cognitive work to figure it out. And maybe that's all the work they want to put into it instead of actually looking at your products that you've made. I think simple, always the way to go. You don't need a very complex logo. If you want maybe like a fancy W for a monogram, make sure that the font below it is a very, very simple sans serif font, those sorts of things.
Look at Nike or look at Apple. Could those be any simpler? They know what they're doing. They've done this before. They've done this marketing branding thing before.
A little bit.
Yeah, once or twice.
So I feel like with new craft business owners, it's often doing too much too fast and getting super overwhelmed. And I feel like it even applied to me when I started. But you see all these great social medias, right? And you're like, oh, I want to make TikToks and I want to be on Instagram and I want to market myself on Facebook and I need to start an email list. And the list grows and grows and grows. And if you try to tackle it all at once, you're just going to get overwhelmed and just say, forget about all of it, because each one of those is a learning process and extremely difficult to learn, in my opinion. So like I often tell people just dive into one of those at a time, get comfortable with it, master it, find your audience on that platform. And then once you're comfortable, add another one. So like just kind of slowly ease into marketing, especially on social and different things like that, instead of just diving into all of it at once and just getting overwhelmed.
I suffer from, I'm not going to reach out all the people I want to reach because I'm not getting on all the platforms, right? I'm missing opportunities, and it makes me like super anxious. I've had to talk about this with my coach quite a bit of like, I feel like I'm constantly missing out. I'm not doing enough. I think especially as women, most of us are women. I feel like we always feel like we should be doing more, that we should, do all these things. But if I'm trying so hard to market my products, that gives me no time to make my products or to read a book or eat dinner with my family or whatever it is, because I'm on social media all the time. And so, yes, there are probably a ton of people on TikTok who are my people, and I'm just not reaching them right now. And I have to be okay with that.
That's okay. I think it's good to go out there and reserve all those channels when you get to
Yes.
that point.
Yep.
Then don't feel, when you have your bio set, they can find you. If they really want to get to you, they will find you there and get to where they need to go. But yes, I think just the mindset, giving yourself permission to not have to do everything. It's like saying I'm going to clean the house and I'm going to vacuum, scrub the floors, and dust all at the same exact time. No, but there's a certain pattern. You get it done, and it feels good when you're done.
Yeah, you can claim all those handles for free and they can sit there for as long as you need them to, and you can come
Forever.
back to them later. There is no rules here. So claim them, and when you're ready, join TikTok. Or I always use TikTok as my example because often that's the platform where everyone thinks they need to be, and I find them, the commenters and everything, extremely mean sometimes. So it's often the last platform I look at personally, just because of that. I also feel like this, you're probably doing this whole thing either as a side hustle or a full-time business, either to like support your family or as a side hustle to like make extra money. But probably a third reason is because crafting brings you joy. And at a certain point, you don't want to pull too much joy out of it. And a lot of those things can do that to you when you get extremely overwhelmed and you just stress yourself out. It just takes that third portion of it, the joy, out of it. And like the joy of working for yourself is no longer there because there's no joy in it.
I totally agree.
All right. So if you are joining us live, any last minute comments, questions, now's the time to drop those in that live chat because we're going to start pulling some of those up here in a few minutes. But for our last question, how can you track the effectiveness of your marketing efforts and then make those adjustments accordingly?
I always put them in my planner. So I have a marketing planner where I'd like to sit down once a month and go through my stats on social media, my income. So a lot of it comes from my QuickBooks, or I'll go to the social media channels and pull those statistics. But I like to put them all on one page at the end of the month. And then I can look, you know what? I forgot to show up on stories on Instagram, and look at that. It didn't do anything. So maybe it tanked, but at least then I can see and not base my next step or my next marketing plan on how many likes I got, but go look at the back end and go look at the data and say, okay, I started to do 3 emails a week. Remember, I never wanted to do more than 1 a month. Now I do 3 or 4 a week. And it's really increased my traffic to my website, traffic to my shop, open rates, click rates. And the more those start to build up, the more other opportunities come.
I think you can, excuse me. I mean, it makes it really easy if you have an Etsy shop or a Shopify shop. There's some analytics in there that you can see sometimes where those orders are coming from. You can also, there is a thing, and I'm going to get really technical here, guys. Just Google it. It's not as hard as it sounds. You can add I think it's called a UTM to the back of a link. And it's basically it's like a little piece of tracking code at the end of a link so that you'll know like, okay, this is the same link to this product on my Instagram, on my website, and in my email. But if you add that little tracking code, you can make a different tracking code for your email, a different tracking code for your Instagram, and a different tracking code for your wherever the other place I said was. And that way you can actually follow the traffic, be like, oh, wow, a lot of people got to this product from my email, but almost nobody came there from Instagram. So maybe this is just not connecting with Instagram. Maybe I should try something else.
I think that's a good point. And a lot of times when we got on those different medias, when you're on Instagram, you probably have a different age bracket, your email list, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. And are you talking to them, telling them the same story? Like when you tell your grandma story and you tell your 7-year-old a story, you use a different voice, you use a different kind of verbiage with it, and make sure that you're putting your marketing forward that way too is a good way. But I love that tracking. And a lot of times it's so hard not to make those decisions on if my business is good, meaning am I good, which we need to separate those two, but then making them on data information and not that emotional, how many people watch that reel or whatever.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
hard.
like you talking about the different age groups of social media. First of all, like that ideal customer we talked about, which social are they on? And maybe that's the social you start with, and that's where you concentrate a lot of your effort. And then the second thing is perhaps different products do better on different platforms. Like maybe the dog tumblers do great on Instagram, but those dog bandanas, those Facebook people eat them up. So like maybe different products do better on different platforms, and that's okay. You don't have to like sell them the dog bandana later. If the tumbler does well on social, market the tumbler, sell the bandana later.
I know that Crystal Summers, who we had on our third episode about craft fair tips and tricks, she has a online shop and she does craft fairs. And what she sells in those two places is very different. So she makes these cute little Play-Doh sensory kits. She does holiday drops. Those are huge on her website and with her social media. So she'll say like, I have a Christmas drop. It's got all this cute stuff in it and people eat that stuff up. And then you go to a craft fair and that's where she rocks her laser. So she has all sorts of she has some of her Play-Doh kits, but mostly it's cool stuff she's made with her laser. So it all kind of goes to the same kind of busy mom sort of person with little kids. Like she has a target customer, but the products that she has found that sell best at craft fairs and what sells best on her website are two completely different things. All right. So let's see. While Angie goes and pulls up all of the questions, because there have actually been a lot of questions this time, Chelly, can you tell us more about I'm going to say this right, Creativepreneur?
Creativepreneur, yep.
Creativepreneur Boot Camp, which is running really soon, June 10th and 11th.
Yes, Monday and Tuesday. So I have put together, it started out with like 5 sessions over 2 days, and I'm going to just empty all this marketing knowledge. So with the 5 sessions, you're going to learn about standing out in a saturated market, how to create content to put on social media. And I have all these sessions set. There is a workshop with each because there's nothing worse than going to some sort of training and leaving inspired and not knowing where to start. So we put together some worksheets for it, and it is free if you want to jump on the Zooms, or you can grab the VIP package to get the replays. And then we have a couple bonuses and stuff in there, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, so you can attend this boot camp for free. If you're watching on YouTube, I put a QR code up in the corner. You can just scan that QR code. Or if you're on the podcast, it's link.craftingcamps.com/bootcamp. That's link.craftingcamps.com/bootcamp. Join for free. Join Chelly June 10th through 11th. Learn more of her great tips, and you'll be like marketing like a pro in no time at all.
Hey, there you go. Exactly. I'll teach you everything I know in 2 days.
All right, questions. I feel like this is a good one. How far in advance do you market for a specific holiday?
I think it depends on where. If you're doing a craft show or you're doing Etsy, like if you're doing Pinterest, you should already be pinning that fall and Christmas products that you have. But if you're doing a craft show in November, you probably don't want to start talking about it right now. As far as the search goes, the Pinterest, it needs to be out there early just so that the algorithm and all the data behind the scenes, will pick up on that content. But people make last minute decisions. And I think the best thing that you can do for your business when you're in a craft show is help that host market it. And the more you can talk about your products, and other people in the event will start sharing it. So how far out? I guess that was kind of a hard, it was a lengthy answer for a very short question, but
And I think some holidays are bigger than others. Like I'm thinking about Christmas earlier than I'm thinking about Father's Day, right? Maybe I should
right.
think about Father's Day sooner, but I'm not thinking
Just
about
have
it
a week or two
three
for that.
months in advance, right? Like I think about it a week ahead. So you may want to do a little bit more than a week ahead, but say like, hey, this is my Father's Day stuff I've got out, a couple weeks ahead so that people can start planning, but you don't need to start Father's Day in February.
And I would consider the timetable. Like, what is your time? Like, are you going to cut off Christmas orders at a certain date and then take into account shipping time? Like, how long does it take to ship to various places before that holiday and back it up that way? So maybe you need to be selling a couple weeks before you are going to stop selling, your cutoff date for orders, but you need to back it up another week just to account for shipping and like all those crazy holiday shipping times. I'm thinking about Christmas here, but so I would think about maybe a timetable as well when you're thinking about like your calendar.
Yeah, definitely create a calendar based on your own products. We're big fans of having a very nice evergreen sort of basic set of products, right? If you're just making things for every single holiday, one, that means you have a lot of stuff you can't sell until the next time that holiday rolls around. And then two, you can sell the stuff year round, which is just really great. So maybe you're adding on a holiday something or other, but you still have a lot of your evergreen products. But yeah, make a calendar and just say, okay, I want to make these 3 products for Christmas in addition to everything that I make, which would make great gifts year round. So I need to like figure out how long it's going to take me to make those and then factor in all the things Angie was talking about.
And I think it's okay to, a lot of times when we do that, we feel like, oh, but then I'll miss a sale. But it's like when you call the person who cuts your hair and you're like, I want to get my hair cut on Friday at 2. And she's like, I don't work Fridays. So the same kind of thing. You get to set the rules of your business. And then it also creates some anticipation or something, fun
Urgency.
urgency. Thank you. See, you go live and you forget your words. But so it helps your products, and then they feel like they need to get in there and get buying. So when you give them a deadline, nothing is going to make people act faster than to give them a deadline. And then when you run out, and then they'll just be watching and stalking and become, get on your email list and follow you on all your socials. So it will always work out.
All right, I think Corey has a video for this one, so I'm going to put it up. How can you market things on social media without making a ton of items? And I think Corey might just have an answer for you there.
Mock-ups. So mock-ups are basically where you're slapping the image on, a t-shirt or something. This doesn't work for every industry. So if you make hand crocheted scarves, that's not a mock-up, right? But you can say, hey, I make this scarf and I make it in these colors without having to make those colors, or like put, 4 colors of yarn on a second slide in a social media, or say like, which color should I make next? Those sorts of things. So people can get an idea of the other things you can make without you having to make them. But if you do make something like that, if you do make something where you have an image that you're using that you're putting on something. So if you're making something with vinyl, if you're making something with sublimation or DTF printing or white toner printing, or any of these types of product or projects where you are putting an image on top of something else, mock-ups are definitely the way to go. And I do have a YouTube video that came out, I think last week, about how to make a mock-up for free in Canva.
Sweet.
All right, what are your favorite email platforms?
So I will point out that I got an email today from ConvertKit, and ConvertKit is now going to just be called Kit. And we can talk about whether or not that was a smart idea to change their name. Angie and I both don't think it was. Anyway, but one of the things they mentioned in the email is that they are starting a beginner plan for up to 10,000 people on your email list for free, which is huge. I mean, that is, if you can get to 10,000 people on your crafty email list, you are killing it. So I don't know when they're going to launch that. I think they're launching their new name in September. So that might be when they launch it. But keep an eye on ConvertKit or just Kit, because I feel like it's a really robust platform. And I think that their new program is going to be really good.
I love that. I use MailerLite, but if I were to do it all over again, I don't want to go through and change everything. I would probably go with Kit, or I think I'm just going to call it ConvertKit for a couple more years.
All right, and this leads right into this one. How would you suggest getting Etsy customers to join an email list since it's against Etsy's SOP to like add them, just add them. So how would you suggest getting them on the email list?
I do the digital files over there. I don't sell products per se. And I have a slide that says over on the website, we have, tutorials. So it's a card. If you want to learn how to cut this card or make this card, you can come over and watch that. And then eventually that gets them on the email list. So that's how I do it. But
Yeah, I was going to say some kind of freebie, some kind of incentive. I have a little email sign up box, like sign up for my email. And this is on a Shopify site, but you could replicate it. Sign up for my email and get a coupon. So you could just do a coupon. You could have some kind of freebie, some kind of printable that relates to your items, just something that gives them an incentive to sign up. And then, you can make a card and include it with the package. Sign up for my email list, get the coupon code, sign up for my email list, and get this freebie, whatever, and just include it with the package.
Yeah, it's really helpful if on that card, if you're shipping a physical card with a product, to put a QR code on there because then people can sign up right from their phone. And it's really easy to make a QR code in Canva, or there's a whole bunch of programs to do it. Angie and I will have a video on that coming up soon as well.
Let's see. How do you narrow your product down?
so
Any
you're-
advice?
I'm guessing your product line, because we're creatives and every shiny, cute thing out there, we want to make 10 of them and the one for our dog, right? I would say listen to your audience. So as you start to use social media to share when you're making things and that kind of, what are they reacting to? What is popular right now? Going with the trends.
I think it's also important to have a niche. That's the other thing we talk all about, right? Email, find a niche. And so I think finding with that ideal customer and having, like we were saying, make dog products, make bakery teas, make, all of these different things, like find that person or group of people, those people who love to barbecue, make things for them. Because a person who loves to barbecue and finds your site or your craft show booth is going to be super excited. And they're going to be like, I found my person. They're making stuff just for me. Whereas if you go to a craft fair and somebody, like I went to a craft fair recently, and the person had like 2 8-foot tables packed from edge to edge with tumblers. Like you could not even see what all the center tumblers were. And they were in every imaginable like type. And so I'm sitting there picking them all up just to kind of see what she had. And I'm like, it was just so overwhelming. And I had no idea who she was talking to.
That's very good. Yeah.
All right. Thoughts on using TikTok for marketing?
I think if your ideal customer is there, go for it. But make sure that any one of those social medias, make sure it's not your only one. Like I was very reluctant. I have 2 friends who went all in, and their growth in their product sales over there are blowing my mind. So whatever you commit to, I think just jumping in and doing it, but making sure you don't own TikTok, you don't own Instagram, but we do own our email lists. So do TikTok, but make sure you have an email list set up too.
You want to make sure you just don't have all your eggs in one basket. I mean, that's just good business sense no matter what you're doing. So if you have, again, we're not saying go and be on every social media so you have all of these eggs in all of these baskets. But if you're, there have been people who have built up these huge, huge followings on, say, Instagram, and then they go and change the algorithm or their account gets shut down for some unknown reason, they lose everything. And we don't want you to lose everything, which is one of the reasons we're so passionate about you building an email list. Because even then you can be like, guys, I lost my Instagram account, but I'm still here in email. Please commiserate with me. I started this new Instagram account because they won't give me my old one back. And then you can start to build up your following again.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm just going to but yes.
Yes. You can't build a business on social media, but you can use them to build your business.
Couple more questions. This one relates to like the best website platform to make an e-commerce site, since we're talking about like not all your eggs in one basket. And we've covered this a couple of times, but for ease of use, then you want a platform that handles some of the stuff for you. For instance, Etsy, very easy to like do the website itself. They collect and remit your taxes, which is amazing. So they also kind of help you market because you can get in Etsy searches. So if you're starting out, you might look at a platform like that because they do some of the stuff for you. If you want to get more robust in the future, I feel like Corey and I both have Shopify sites. That's something we would recommend. But again, you would need more technical knowledge, and all of those things fall on you: the sales tax, the marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The tech, I have WordPress, and they've recently added where somebody comes to my shop and gets one of my digital files or the planner, it now tells me where they came from. Did they come from a Google search? Did they come from social media? Did they come from Pinterest? So that's kind of fun. But if you're not going to do blogging, I definitely would go Shopify. And if you don't have a following, if you start a website, you're not going to get customers instantly. And that's where, like Angie said, start with somebody who already has the customers for you, like Etsy.
I have seen a lot of shops recently. I've been on Etsy, and this might be against their terms of service. Honestly, I'm not sure because I'm not on Etsy right now. But they'll say things like, a wider selection over on my site, and they're trying to get people over from Etsy that maybe used to buying their products on Etsy to buying them from their website. Because if you're buying from the website, you're not paying Etsy's fees. You're still paying payment processing fees, but you're not paying Etsy's fees. And so if you can convert more of those people to your email list where you're emailing them about your website versus Etsy, that, is a way at some point to start moving off of Etsy once you get that kind of following and you feel comfortable enough that you'll be able to drive that traffic.
All right. And I think that was all the questions I saw.
Let's see.
Unless you saw something else I missed.
I'm looking through. We'll just edit this part out of the podcast where we're scrolling.
Jerry just asked about Equid for a website, and I have not heard of them. So I'm going to say we do not know unless Chelly knows.
No, I haven't heard of that one either.
I haven't heard of that either.
Yeah.
I will say, like, Corey has a story where there was like, you can tell it, where there was like a small thing and it shut down. So going with smaller, I think it was your first blog or something.
Oh, my first blog. Yeah. First blog, the site just shut down. And so all of us who had blogs there had to migrate. I mean, this was back in the day. I think this was probably in 2005. 2005. I mean, it was a long time ago. So, but I do feel like, again, the more pieces of your business that you can own personally, the better off you're going to be. Because when TikTok owns part of your business and Etsy owns part of your business, and the algorithms own part of your business, and they decide one day that Etsy gets shut down because of FTC violations, I don't know, whatever it might be, that is your business that they're holding in their hands. And while many parts of my business are owned by other companies. It's owned by YouTube, and it's owned by Instagram, and it's owned by Shopify. However, I'm trying to gather as much as I can on my own website, on my own channels, just because then if something goes wrong on a big channel, I'm not going to lose everything.
I love that too. And I think making sure that they're reputable. So some of those, this really easy and it's to set up and all that on a website, but then there's not SEO or anything like that. So people can't find you. So they might own your website is another thing where you have to go get a host on some of these other. But the nice thing, the Shopify and Etsy, they sync together, don't they? I don't have Shopify, but I'm pretty sure, is that the one?
I don't know.
I am not sure.
There is.
I pulled all my stuff off Etsy just from their changes they've been making, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think a lot of us who sell digital files, which all three of us do, got really tired of people stealing our stuff and putting it up on Etsy as their own stuff. And I would get constantly bombarded with copyright infringement notices from Russia, China, other places. Basically,
that would stealing your stuff.
Right. automatically take my files down, and then I would have to prove that they were my files, and then they'd be like, "Oh, you can put them back up," but then my files were down for 2 weeks while I fussed with it. So if I ever have physical products, though, I'll probably put them on Etsy. But for now, the digital products on Etsy is a disaster.
And I think it was a good place to start. So when you're starting out, because they bring you the customers,
Yeah.
and then as you get going, then you have more of the foundation to do your own website or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say from our perspective, we've been doing it a really long time. We've built a following. So for us, it makes sense to have our own website where, we can control more things. We can control the design. We can control all of these things. Yes, we have to do our own marketing, sales tax collection, all of those types of things, but it makes more sense for us to do it that way, where it will not as much for like a smaller business or someone just starting out.
Right. It's like you start out on a craft table, and then you get a little boutique downtown, and then you end up wholesaling and getting in all the stores. So the digital process is kind of the same spiral effect, right?
Yeah, and it can be a challenge as a smaller person that doesn't have a following to actually get people over to a Shopify or a WooCommerce. Whereas Etsy, you can like play the game, get in Etsy searches, and you have like an audience built in. So
Yes. The fee that they charge is well worth what it would take to get that same traffic to your store for free.
yes, note we talked about like all like organic marketing tips during this episode and not like Facebook ads. So
Right.
That's because Facebook ads are terrible. I mean, they can be amazing and they can work really well, but you really need either a lot of time to invest on learning or a professional.
Right. And it takes a bigger scale. When I first started, I put $1 on a boost on an ad on a post I had, and the next day I had 800 new likes. That would probably cost me $800 now to get that traffic overnight. And then now that we're going into an election year, it's going to be so busy that learning how to talk to your ideal customer is way more effective.
yes, and especially over the long term, definitely more effective.
And it keeps paying off. I did see somebody asked about website servers. Did you see that, Barbara?
Oh,
So
yep.
she said, what website servers do you recommend? I just switched to Big Scoots and love them.
We use Big Scoots for a website that we're working on together that is not a website you guys should go to yet because I have not finished it. But we use Big Scoots and they were so helpful getting everything set up. We did not pay. They have like you can pay a little extra and they'll set everything up for you for your website. They'll install a theme, etc. We did we're going to do it on our own, which was hilarious because as technical as Angie and I are, because we've been doing this for so long, it's been a long time since either of us has created a website from scratch. So we ended up doing it, but it was But so Big Scoots, huge recommendation there. They've been great.
And they are really affordable. So if you're looking for like an affordable website server, I would like highly recommend Big Scoots. It was very affordable. It was like the most affordable one we looked at.
And I can't think of any customer, not just website hosts, but any company that has the customer service that they have. Like, it blows my mind. I want to go to one of their like internal meetings and see like, how do you come up with this? So it's amazing. I can't recommend them enough.
Corey, any advice on mock-ups with rhinestones? Have you ever made those?
I haven't. It's the first time I saw that question come through and I was like, I have not thought about this, Marie. And I may have to think on it some more because it sounds time intensive, but also fun.
Yeah.
It's like a good challenge. I'll have to think about it a little bit more.
And then you want to chat about marketing on Pinterest just a little bit and having the post go to your website, like any Pinterest tips, Chelly?
I think being consistent is more beneficial on Pinterest than, I know they're not a social media technically, but they have a lot of aspects that make them feel like a social media. And then the stuff that I pinned, in 2017 is when I first started, is still coming back. So that's what I love about putting it out there on Pinterest. It's going to continue to deliver. You drop it on TikTok, you drop it on Facebook, 48 hours if you're lucky. Sometimes something will go viral, but it's more like a gambling addiction posting.
Yeah, I'll say for me, Pinterest is a long game. So don't expect an immediate return is the only caveat I would say. So it's a long game. Those pins last a long time. They can bring you traffic for a long time. And sometimes it takes a long time for them to get going. Pinterest is my number one traffic driver to my website. So it's definitely worth it. However, it's a long game. It's not immediate.
Yeah, you need to make a lot of pins. You need to have good photography, which I know we've talked about a lot, because nobody's going to click on a pin with a picture that is kind of blurry and it's got your messy kitchen in the background, and they can't really see what the project is or anything like that. It needs to have good photography, and you can overlay text. You can do that you can do that in Canva for free. Let people know what it is. But yeah, it is definitely a long game. My number one post from Pinterest is still how to make tissue paper flowers, which I made 10 years ago. And those pins are still rocking it.
That's funny. Mine was a flower that I made with a baby sock.
It's always the most random things.
So random.
Not the things that you think are going to stick.
And
Yes,
we had a couple people ask about Big Scoots and the spelling, and it is literally how it sounds. So it's BIGSCOOTS.com. That's bigscoots.com. And then maybe last question, how often should you post on Instagram? Do you have any posting frequency tips, Chelly?
I say come up with something that works for you, that you can be consistent. I have a whole topic at the boot camp about this. This is one of the sessions, is making sure that you are, sometimes we get all excited and the kids are off of school, you're between football and dance practice. So you've got this window and all this free time and you're throwing stuff up all the time, 3 times a day. And then the next thing you know, it's been 3.5 weeks and you've only posted once. So coming up with a schedule that I think works for you. And then as you do that, creating the content and showing up consistently becomes easier. So you can batch content and keep doing it. But obviously, when you're starting out and growing a business, I feel that the harder you work, the harder it's going to pay off. So if you spend 10 minutes on it, you're going to get a return of 10 minutes. If you sit down and you're serious and you put some real time into it, it's definitely one of those things that can help grow your business. But don't let it overwhelm you either.
So bottom line is be sure to sign up for the boot camp for all those tricks, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's a whole nother topic right there in itself. Do podcast part 2.
All right, I think we have run a little bit long, so we are going to cut off our questions here. If you have more questions, because I see them coming through still, if you have more questions, go ahead and just leave the question below this video after it's done posting, just as a comment, and we can get back to you. You can also give us those questions in our link, which is underneath the YouTube video or the podcast in the podcast notes. There's submit your question link, and we have a form. You can submit them there, and we can hopefully tackle them in a later episode. Obviously, we talk about things that overlap in a lot of episodes. I don't think Angie and I have not talked about email in an episode yet. So there are things, don't worry that we're not going to cover it in this particular episode. We will be talking about marketing again in the future.
So thank you, Chelly, so much for coming on. You all be sure to check her out on Instagram. It's We Can Make That. And then join that Creativepreneur. I'm hoping I made Corey say that part, so I'm going to hope I'm saying that right. Creativepreneur boot camp. And that is link.craftingcamps.com/bootcamp. Grab the free ticket, join her June 10th and 11th, and learn even more marketing tips.
Awesome.
All right. And then our next episode, I think you guys are going to be really excited. We have the incomparable Jennifer Maker joining us. She is going to be talking to us about creating a compelling brand and why you should share your brand. So as you know, Jennifer Maker has an really strong branding, right? You see something come across and you know immediately that it is Jennifer's. So if you are familiar with her, you know that she'll be great talking about this. That is going to go up live on YouTube. We're going to have our live YouTube episode on June 20th. And then the podcast episode for that live will come out June 24th. Again, below the podcast or below the YouTube video or in the podcast notes, sign up for our newsletter because we will be giving you reminders.
And then if you have any friends that need some marketing tips for their small business, their handmade business, share this episode with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate and review on your favorite podcasting platform or give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Both of those help us so much, and we really appreciate it. Helps keep us in that #1 in the US in craft spot and hopefully makes us grow worldwide. So we will see you in 2 weeks for that Jennifer Maker episode. And thank you so much